Okay, welcome everybody to Fun with Forensics. Sorry for the bit of a delay there, just having some technical issues. And we wanted to give folks a couple of minutes just to get in the room. I'm really looking forward to talking with you all today about forensics, which is definitely a passion area of mine. So I'll be bouncing back and forth between the slide deck and the chat and some of the tools that we'll be using today. If you haven't already, I put a link at the top of the chat, like the first chat message that's there, that has the materials for today. So you could go ahead and download that. I decided that in terms of what the audience will be using, it'll be just volatility and Wireshark, and then we'll step through some of the other tools together, just through my screen, like more as a demo. Let me just check to make sure that link's still in there. Thank you, Nicole, for putting that there. Awesome. Yeah, I don't think that we're recording these workshop sessions, although I'm not sure. Maybe we are. Maybe Nicole, I don't know if you know.
Yes, we are.
Oh, perfect. Okay, well, there you go. Well, we are going to have Autopsy. It's just going to be a visual demo of Autopsy, just in the interest of time. 2 hours is really short to go through all the material. Okay, well, I think we should get started because we have lots of stuff to do. So anyway, I'm Marcelle. That's my Twitter handle there, and it's the same handle for pretty much everything that I use. A little bit about me. I'm a senior security researcher with a company called SecureWorks. It's based in Atlanta, although I am not based in Atlanta. I work remotely. I'm also an adjunct professor. I teach at a couple of different universities, and primarily I'm teaching forensics. Like I said, it's a passion area for me. I'm also involved with Women's Society of Cyberjutsu. They're very near and dear to my heart. I am the director of competition programming. So I saw somebody say in the chat that they thought I'd be in the CTF channel. Typically, that is where you would find me, but not at the moment. Although I have done the Trend Micro CTF before, and it was pretty fun. And as I say here on the screen, ask me about the CTF Slack. Like, don't ask me right this second, but I'll have a link to it at the end. We have Cyberjutsu Capture the Flag Slack group that we basically advertise all the different competitions that we know of and are going to do together and whatnot. So you're welcome to jump into that if cyber competitions are something that interests you. And I hope it is, because they're fun. Okay. Let's see what else. Oh, and I'll also mention, this is not on the slide, but just in terms of, explaining like my background a little bit, I'm a career changer. I did not start out in the world of cybersecurity. I was in an entirely different field doing like project management and operations for a variety of different like industry segments. And I essentially got really bored with that, and I wanted to be the person that did the stuff instead of the person that managed the stuff. So I did, well, I guess I'd say I took the plunge by taking classes at my local community college, and I fell in love with cybersecurity like pretty much instantly. So still happy to be here. It's been about a 10-year journey, and I still learn new stuff practically every day, I would say. So that's one of the cool things about the field. Anyway, so about this workshop. So the idea of what we're going to be doing here is we're examining evidence of a breach. So we're going to be looking at memory capture, a packet capture, and a hard drive, and maybe a couple of other things here and there. And what we're going to try to do is answer questions about who, what, when, where, how, like what happened, how did it happen, and so on and so forth. So we should be able to piece together a pretty good picture just by looking at the different pieces of evidence. Excuse me. So here's our scenario. Bob Roberts is our victim. he's an accountant who's looking for new opportunities, and he might have found more than he expected in terms of those opportunities. So we have an unknown threat actor is the likely culprit of the incident. We don't even really know what the incident is yet, but you know, obviously something has happened because we've been called in to do an investigation. So you all and I are the investigators for this. So put on your detective hats and we'll get going. So the evidence that we have, and there's the link again, is the forensic image of Bob's computer, which I'm actually not giving you right now because it's just too big and it'll take you forever to download it, but I will make it available later if people want to, play around with it. Then we have 2 network traffic captures, Bob and Bob1. We have a memory dump, bob.mem, and then we have a report output from a tool called Last Activity View, and I have that in this folder that's referenced there. 2 different ways. I have it as a zipped up file because for some reason Google did not want me to upload just report.html, but I also just opened it as a Google Sheet, so that would probably be the easier route, just use that, but feel free to do as you wish there. Okay. So every investigator has to have a toolkit, and these are the tools that we'll be using today. In terms of what you all need, really just the Wireshark and the volatility, but there's links there for everything because they're all cool tools and they're all free, which is amazing. We have so much open source material and tools available to us in this industry. It's really amazing, and I appreciate those organizations that make these available to us. Okay, so here are the questions that we are going to attempt to answer over the next couple of hours or so. So we want to know, first of all, what happened. So when you're an investigator and you're going on, to say the scene, you need to know like what was impacted, what systems were involved, and just what the whole deal is around the whole thing. So so we have that, and then we want to find out what the likely initial infection vector was. So how did this thing get into the system? What tools did the threat actor use, and what remediation steps would we recommend to prevent further instances of this sort of thing happening? So what I would recommend as you go along is take some notes on what you're finding and observing, and try to correlate the findings between the different pieces of evidence. So you'll see things, say in the network traffic capture, and then you might see something in the hard disk image that, would correlate between those 2 things. So, and that's the best way we can get a really robust picture of what happened is having those different sources of evidence. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is look at the packet captures. So I'm going to exit out of here. We're going to start with just the regular Bob, not Bob1, pcap-ng. And I'll get that fired up in a second. But we're going to start by looking at the endpoints, as you can see on the screen there. So let's do this. Let me see if there's any questions. Okay, looks like we're doing okay. So I'm gonna go on over here to Bob. I have to open Bob instead of Bob1. Okay, so those of you who know me know that Wireshark is like my favorite tool in the entire world. I love Wireshark. It's just so cool to me, the stuff that you can get out of network traffic. And I will tell you also, in part of my journey, like the first time I was ever exposed to Wireshark was through a cyber competition that I was doing. And there was a file that we had to analyze to try to figure out what happened in a breach. And it was, whatever.pcap. And like the first thing I had to do was Google pcap because I didn't have the slightest idea what it was. But I was kind of hooked. I don't know if it's all the pretty colors or what, but I really like it. So when I start out looking at capture, I will typically go to the statistics menu. And there's a lot of goodness in here, and I'll just step through some of these real quick. Capture file properties, that just gives you like an overview of how many packets were in there. So in this case, we have like almost 14,000 packets. So that can be useful. Then protocol hierarchy is always a go-to for me, and we're going to come back to this after we look at the endpoints. And then we have conversations and endpoints. So the difference between those is, like right now, you all are all endpoints in this this session, and I'm talking to like all of you, so that traffic is just, you know, sort of dispersed. But with the conversations, that would be more of a, if I was talking like in a private message directly to one person. So a little bit different. So we're going to look at endpoints though to start with. And the way that Wireshark breaks this up is you have your Ethernet endpoints, which are going to be the MAC addresses, right? So the physical address of the computer or whatever device it is. Then you have all your IPv4 traffic. We actually have a little bit of IPv6, but what we're looking for here is TCP traffic. We'll also take a look at UDP traffic. So I can see from looking at this that we essentially only have 2 hosts here. So this would be the very first thing that I would make a note of, right? So we have 2 IPs with 10.0.2.15 and then 10.0.2.22. So we know one of these is our victim. We don't really know who the other one is yet, but we're going to see what we can find out from this. So let's do that again. Let me go back over here to my deck. So let's take a look at those numbers again, endpoints, TCP. So you can see there's the address and then the port number. And if there's anything interesting to you on these port numbers, you could say so in the chat. I'll take a look at the chat for a second and see what you get.
One question, when collecting evidence, would we keep notes on possible points of doubt too?
Oh, sorry, I totally missed that question. Can you say it again?
Oh, yes. When collecting evidence, would we keep notes on possible points of doubt too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So when you're doing an investigation, you should have a completely open mind as to what happened, right? And you might, and you probably will already have some inkling or some suspicions or whatever, but it's really important to collect evidence that, you know, supports your case, but also evidence that doesn't support your case. So yeah, basically document everything is really important. All right. Okay. I don't know. All right, so let me go back to Wireshark. So in terms of port numbers, has anybody noticed anything weird about port numbers? Any port numbers on there that stand out? I'll see if anybody's answering. Okay, well, I'll say. So we have port number 3389. 3389 is remote desktop protocol. So that means that there was a connection using remote desktop. Might be worth investigating further. And then we have these sort of odd 99998888 port numbers. Not really sure what those were all about. I think they would be worth investigating further. And then we've got a 31337 port number. These are all things that stand out to me as potential areas to search in further. The other ones that we see, like the 40,000, 30,000 ones, other than the 31337, are likely just the receiving end of some communication that that particular host is sent out. So just random high number ports. Okay, so we've got definitely some things to look at. So I'm going to make a note of the port numbers as well. And I'm literally like writing down notes too, just so I'll be doing the same thing you'll be doing, hopefully. All right. Okay. So I'm going to close that up. And then the next thing I want to do is go back over to the protocol hierarchy. And basically this breaks down the network stack and what's happening at each of the layers. And what I typically will hone in on is anything that's marked as data. So I've got some data here under UDP, and I've got some TCP data also. So I have an inkling of what the UDP data might be, but let's just take a look and see. So you can right click on those fields and say apply as a filter, and then select it. And that's going to basically create a not very sophisticated filter of data. You could also just type that in yourself. But now we're looking at anything that Wireshark has marked as a data packet. So what are the first few packets that we see here? We've got an echo request, echo reply, which is ping. We've got the .22 sending the request to the .15. So you can see that from the source and then the destination. The ping request would typically be the first part of the sequence, and then the reply would come in. So just looking at that maybe gives me an idea that the victim in this case is the .15, and that the potential attacker is the .22. So that gives us a little clue to go on. And then when we go down a little bit further, I'm just going to move this so I can see better. Okay. We have different streams. So your Wireshark might not be configured the same as mine. I'll take a moment now to show you how to do this configuration. But if you just click on, say, packet number 1300, and that's the number over there on the far left, if you drill down in the packet details section in the middle here, you'll see stream index. And if you right click on that and say apply as a column, I'm not going to do it because I already have it, of course. And you can do this with anything. So if you want to, have the flags as a column, you could have that, or the window size or anything. I tend to like to have the stream index, though. That's the main thing that I'll go with. And the stream is essentially, like when I was talking about the conversations before, the stream is going to be the back and forth between the two endpoints. So I see here, just from a quick scan, it looks like we have two streams, it looks like. Yeah, TCP stream 2 and TCP stream 5. So let's take a look and see what's going on. Another thing that I see here, is that port 9999 that we observed earlier. And then when I see this push ACK, that basically means that data is being sent back and forth. And what we don't see there is the SYN ACK, SYN ACK, and that bit of the TCP three-way handshake, because we're filtered just now on data. So if I right click here and say follow the TCP stream, and that's going to basically show us everything that was happening in that stream. So now we have our TCP three-way handshake here, the SYN, SYN-ACK, and ACK, and then the data starts to transfer, and then it ends down here with the FIN-ACK, and then we have a whole closure sequence. And this is the data that was being sent between the two endpoints. So basically test and testing. So I don't know about you all, but that sounds like somebody's doing some testing, right? So that's nice, but it doesn't really give us a whole lot of information. So let's try next filtering on the other TCP stream, which was 5. Okay. And we've got a fair bit of activity going on here. If you look at the very bottom of the screen, you'll see it shows you the total number of packets, but then it also showed you the displayed number of packets. So we have 215 packets in this particular stream. So we're going to do the follow the TCP stream again. So right click any of those, follow TCP stream. Oh, now we've got something happening. So you'll notice the two different colors here. There's like, I don't know, is it pink and purple, something like that? Anyway, so one side is, one end of the conversation, the other side's the other end of the conversation. So I can just drill down into the one side, and then I can drill down into the other side. So let's look at it all together though. So we're starting out here with essentially like a banner from a connection, and it's telling us some important information. It's saying basically the host that was being connected was Microsoft Windows, Windows 10. And we have a user, i.e. user. And then there's a command being run. And the command is who am I, which basically tells them the same thing. And then they run another command. So basically what we're seeing here is remote access to the .15 from the .22, and they have the ability to run commands. They have command line access, or basically a command line shell. So we definitely have some remote activity happening. So we have now the remote person is running netstat.ano, and that gives us some information about the different connections that were in place at that particular point in time. And we have a whole lot of listening, but what I'm really interested in is the established connections. So we see here, we have the 3389. So we've got the victim running RDP and the remote host connecting into it. Probably not a good thing, right? If we don't know who it is doing that RDP connection. I also see, let's see, we've got some other IP addresses here that may or may not be interesting, but I would, make a note of them. And let's see, what else do we have? And then we have this connection here from port 8888 on the victim. So that means that somebody's connecting in onto port 8888. And so that's likely what we're looking at in this actual stream right here. And this is a typical kind of command that you would see somebody run. And then they run a net accounts, gives you some idea of basically the user configuration. There were a few commands that didn't work. The net share, which is another one you'll see a lot of. And let's see, net config, net view, which didn't come out with anything. And then a dir to see what's in the directory that they're currently in. And it looks like they're just in the user's home directory. And then cd to the documents and another dir. And then we see some files down here that look like financial type documents. So perhaps that's what the threat actor was after. We're not really sure, but we at least have a clue now about what could be happening. So let's see if there's anything useful from those other port numbers that we noticed. So you could do a filter tcp dot port space equals equals. You don't actually need a space, but it just looks tidier to me. 9999, and what was that? This was our TCP stream too that we already looked at. And then 8888 is, I believe, TCP stream 5. Yes. And what else? Oh, there was the 31337. That doesn't look like anything connected. So they were trying to do something here and it just didn't work. But 31337, of course, is leet speak for the word elite. I think that's what it is. So usually that's a red flag. I don't think most threat actors are that obvious, but we're trying to be kind of obvious for demonstration purposes. All right, let me bounce back over here and see if there's any questions.
There was one question at the very end. Is there a way to extract all streams to files from a PCAP? Greg was asking.
Yeah, you can copy them off. I don't know if there's a way to do it bulk, but you can certainly do it one at a time. And let me, oh yeah, so yeah, what you said is other than, I think that's the only way that I know to do it, but I would definitely encourage you to use a little Google foo and see if there was a way to do it from Wireshark. Yeah, T-Shark would probably be better, or like TCP dump or something like that. Okay. So I think that's pretty much all the useful information we're going to get out of this packet capture. So let's open up the other one and see what we get. Bob 1. So I'm going to basically follow the same process and see if we get any additional information or confirmation of what we learned the first time. So let's take a look at our endpoints again. So we have same 2 IP addresses, and we've got port number 3389 again, which we already discussed was RDP, and then port number 6666, which we don't know what that is at the moment. And then your just random high numbered ports here. UDP looks like basically primarily DNS traffic and then the Microsoft communications like 137 and 138. So, all right, so we've got something to go on there. So let's just take a look at that port number 666. The nice thing about Wireshark is it'll autofill for you. So when I type TCP dot, obviously you can see it gives me this whole drop down here. So let's see what we get for 6666. Okay, looks like we've got another one of these streams of data being pushed back and forth. So let's take a look at this. Is there more than one? Nope, just the one. So let's see, we'll do a follow here. Okay, so more of the same. Let's see if the user did anything different. Let's see, checking for network connections. Looks like we've got, well, we already saw the RDP and then this traffic that we're looking at now in port number 6666. Nothing really new there. Oop, we have some activity right here. We've got a user being added, and the user that's being added is hacker, possibly the threat actor. I'm going to say probably yes, and they're not very good at passwords, as you can see, with password 123 as their password. But then they go on to add that account to the administrator group. So that basically means they just rather easily escalated privileges there. And then we have a whole lot of stuff happening here. And this I would copy off and perhaps try to analyze it to see what it is. But I can tell you it's the output of a pretty common Windows exploitation or post-exploitation tool. And it might give you some clues about what was happening there. And this might be even more of a clue with this and this. All right, let me bounce back over here. Move everything around so I can see. Okay. Okay, I don't see any new questions, so groovy. If anybody has an idea what this might be, feel free to to put it in the window. I don't want to give it up exactly just yet. We'll come back to that later. So some kind of script is being sent. All right. The RDP traffic is not going to really give us anything because it's all encrypted, so you can't actually see what's happening. Let's just take a look, get an idea. So we have 820 packets of RDP traffic here. Oh, that's not RDP. Hold on. Didn't do it properly. There we go. Yeah, still 820. So lots of remote access happening. So we've got some port numbers, we've got some IP addresses. At this point, we've probably identified our victim is the .15 and our threat actor is the .22. So let's go back over here. Go forward a couple of slides. Yes, we did all this. And we did this. Okay, perfect. So we've got some clues from the network capture. Let's move on to volatility. Volatility is a pretty cool command line tool. I will say that I did run into some issues with analyzing the dump from a Windows 10 box, like not all the commands worked properly. So I was a little bit limited in what I was able to extract from the image, but there are other tools out there that you can use. There's one from FireEye, I think it's called Recall, that's also free. And so that's another one that you could try if you wanted to play around with this later. Okay, so volatility is all command line. I'm gonna show it over here in my Windows box. So volatility is available for any platform, basically. I'm using it on the Windows box here because I'm also running Autopsy on the Windows box, and I like Autopsy better on the Windows box than I do on Linux. It's just a little easier to parse through for me. So once you have volatility installed, basically you're just going to launch it, invoke it from the command line. I named my application volatility.exe. It was called something else before, like much longer with a version number, but just for ease of viewing. And then the very first command that you're going to run is image info to find out, again, what kind of image are we looking at? Volatility needs to know, is it Windows, is it Mac, is it Linux, and what flavor of any of those things. So you run this command, you have the TAC-F always, because that's just basically saying this file, and then the bob.mem is what we want to look at for that. So let me pop over here for some questions, if there are any. Oh, thanks, Vincent, for sharing that link. I'm going to have to look at that one too. Actually, I'm going to click on it right now so I don't forget. Ah, perfect. Always learning every day. Okay, so let's go back over here. So I've already run this because it does take a little bit of time and it gives you some output. I've got like different options here, but they're all basically Windows 10, except for this last one that says Windows 2016. I don't know if that's different. But anyway, so I know now what profile to use, and that's important because knowing the profile is what helps volatility parse through the data. If you don't know the profile, sometimes stuff will still work, but not necessarily. So I'm going to do the net scan command next. So basically, to syntax again, volatility, we don't need image info anymore because we've done that. And then file, and then it's actually easiest just to drag it and drop it. And I forget what the path was now. All right. So bob.mem. Okay. And then this is the part where we put in the profile. So out of all those ones that we got there, I'm just going to go with the one that seems kind of the most simple. Whoops. Tac profile equals when 64. When I could type sometime today would be nice. And then, is that what we want? Yes. And then this is where you give it the plugin to use. So if you look at the volatility cheat sheet, there's a zillion different plugins. So like I said, I tried quite a few of them that I would normally use and they didn't work with this Windows 10 capture, but I did get some success with NetScan. So let's try that. And oops. Oh, I might have did the profile wrong. Hold on. Let me go back to my deck. Win 10 x64. I'm pretty sure that's what I typed. Yes, okay. Maybe I did not type that. It's quite possible I fat fingered something. Oh yeah, I did. I forgot the 10 part. Windows 10, 64. Definitely doesn't like it if you put the wrong profile in. And again, this takes a little bit of time to process. And this particular memory capture was from 4 gigs of memory. Obviously, the bigger the memory capture, the longer it takes to get these results. It's not unusual, of course, to have lots more memory than that, like 16 gigs. It's probably more of a standard these days and can be much higher than that. All right, we'll wait for that for a second. I'll just go over here and see if there's any questions. It looks like some questions about volatility. Yeah, I thought it was in Kali, but it seems that it's not, which it's very weird to me, but it should be pretty easy to install. You can also just run it locally. I didn't put anything malicious in any of these files, so you don't have to worry about bad things happening to your computer. I try to avoid infecting my workshop attendees. All right. That's very slow going. So not the prettiest output in the world. You can see it's having a little bit of trouble parsing some of the information there. We're getting some odd symbols. But what we do see is the network connections to 10.0.2.15. And of course, we could be making and should be making note of the times of all these things, but pretty much it seems like everything was happening around June 19th and June 16th. Obviously, when I was giving,
from Joshua. He wants to know if during a normal investigation, how he would go about getting the dump of the memory.
Oh, excellent question. So there's rules of evidence collection where you basically don't ever want to leave any kind of imprint of, the investigator on the evidence, and everything is done like super securely by creating forensic images and hashing things and all that, just to make sure that A, you're never working on the actual evidence, and B, any copies that you're using are forensically accurate. So the hashes are what helps with that verification process. So the exception to that is capturing like basically the live data. So if you want to be able to capture the memory from a computer, you have to do it while it's still powered on. As soon as you power it off, that is gone. So that's one of those sort of exceptions to like touching the evidence, because you have to run a tool to extract the memory. So in this case, I used a tool called FTK Imager, which is another free tool. It's good for, I'd say, lightweight analysis, and it's great for extracting memory captures. So you have to run that on the host, obviously, to make it work. But that's something, you know, as an investigator, you would just notate that, you know, any of the artifacts around FTK Imager, or FTK Imager Lite in this case is what we used, were from the investigator. So it's one of those times that you can't avoid actually touching the evidence. All right, so this is finally finished. It looks terrible, it's hard to read, but we can see some external connections here. And we can also see some other ones. The 10.0.2.15 we've seen before, and we also know that that's an internal IP address. So that makes me think that, you know, the attack was potentially, well, not even potentially, but it was happening from within Bob's own network. And then where these ones are external IP addresses. So I would probably make a note of these two IP addresses just to see what they were. And if anybody wants to go ahead and look them up, you can. I will tell you that there's no smoking guns there, but you kind of want to leave no stone unturned, right? Obviously, you know, you might have a packet capture that has hundreds and hundreds of like IP addresses in there. It might be difficult to sort them all out. But in this particular case, those two, and it's very hard to see it on the screen, are established connections. So that's something that's actively taking place. So we can look them up real quick. And there's a zillion different tools for lookup. I'm trying to write down these numbers. Okay. So many different tools for lookups. Oh, and FTK Imager, unfortunately, it's only for Windows. Oh, and thanks for the link, Nicole. That's awesome. Oh yeah, and I think hopefully I answered the question for Shericel, if that's how you say it. You just have to document that. Yeah, you have to document that that was the investigator tool, and it's standard practice. So, but yes, if you're going to be dealing with something that's going to be presented at court, you want to really make sure you cross all your T's and dot all your I's, because if you don't have good records tracking the disposition of the evidence, it can cause problems with your case for sure. And there's a document called a chain of custody form, which basically is from the time the evidence is captured to the time that you know, it's ultimately disposed of. It's got to be documented every step of the way. So anytime somebody takes it out to do something, you know, forensics on it or whatever. So yes, that's definitely an important thing. Although we're doing, so, I mean, there's criminal cases, there's civil cases, and then there's like corporate type investigations. In this case, you could kind of spin it in various ways, but it could be a criminal case where, you know, somebody's hacked into Bob's account, or it could be a case of corporate, if this was like Bob's computer on a network. We haven't really fleshed out all those details, so you could kind of take it in any direction that you wanted, but it's good to be methodical in any case. Okay, what was I just doing? Oh yes. So like I said, lots of places to look up domains. I have been kind of digging VirusTotal lately for looking up domains and IP addresses. I also use domain tools. I use RiskIQ's Passive Total, I think, something like that, platform. And these all have, you know, free levels of membership, with limitations, of course, on what you can do. So let me pop in one of those IP addresses and see what we get. And like I said, it's not going to be a smoking gun, but we'll see. All right, so it's Microsoft Corporation. not a giant surprise that my Microsoft box would be communicating with Microsoft, obviously. And then we have, and if you haven't looked at this kind of thing in VirusTotal before, it's super useful because you can see where there's all the different communicating files. So these are the files that were talking to this IP address. And you can see like they're all kind of some kind of spammy looking thing. Just because it's reaching out to this Microsoft domain doesn't make the Microsoft domain or IP address bad. It's just the way the malware is written. And then same thing here as well with the referring files. And then we have some graphs that people have created. That should be interesting, the Pornhub graph. I'm not going to open that. Not that it would have anything in it, of course, but so anyway, so I like the information that I can get. It will also show you in the details section the HTTPS certificate, if there is one. And we can see down here, like we've got common name for the certificate is events.data.microsoft.com. Sometimes those certificates can be a clue that you can pivot off of. So say you're looking up like a malicious domain, sometimes that certificate name is for another related domain because they've just kind of shared the hosting there. So that can be useful. And then your whois lookup. And then this is a really cool feature, the Google results. So if you're looking up something malicious, this is very nice to be able to see if there's you know, any other references out there. It just basically saves you a step of Googling it yourself. So I'm a big fan of using VirusTotal. So at any rate, it's Microsoft, not too exciting. We'll just see what the other one is now. All right, so the other one was 204, whoops, yeah, 204, why can I not type? 204, 79, 197, 200. Oh, surprise, surprise, so it's Microsoft again. Although, ironically, it is considered malware by this one antivirus vendor, which is kind of funny. And so again, same information, although here you can see the CNAME is Bing. So obviously that's the Microsoft search engine. So that's probably where this was all coming from. And all your whois stuff. And then again, some different search results for it. And we've got some community reporting here. So somebody's saying it's a C2 command to control. Okay, possibly. And I don't think so. It's probably just something linked in there. So yeah, so I like VirusTotal for checking out these things in addition to files and whatnot. All right, so let's see. Got some questions. Oh, right. So somebody was asking, Greg was asking if I use FTK Imager to capture the data in the system. I typically use a command line tool called DD, but when you're using a virtual machine, you can actually just extract out the VMDK file and convert that to like a raw image file. And I use something called QEMU. I don't even know if that's how you say it, but it's QEMU. So that is a nice tool for doing all the conversions. So yeah, so with a virtual machine, you don't actually have to create the image because that's the way it's built. It already has all the images. Same thing with the memory actually too on the virtual machine. If you're using VirtualBox, you have to basically export it into like VMware in order to get the detailed input, because VirtualBox just compresses everything into a single file. Anyway, let's see, where was I? Okay, so we've checked out those IP addresses. They weren't anything particularly exciting. And the 10.0 0.2.15 was just various high numbered ports that were associated with it. So again, those ephemeral connections that the numbers don't mean anything. Although I will say, I can't even tell you, like when I first started doing this, how many times I did like a port search for, you know, like 49170. And yeah, I finally learned that whole socket thing, which is what that is called when you combine the IP address with the port number, the socket. Okay, moving right along. No, this isn't pretty presentation style, but it's easier for me to see all the different things. Okay, so like I said, normally some of the other commands that I would run in volatility were not working. I would do PS list to list all the running processes. And if that had worked, we would have seen a couple of things that might have been useful to us, but I think we'll get the details out of Autopsy instead. So there's that. And I would also run command history. That can be really useful to see what commands have been run on the box. Especially if you're dealing with, you know, Bob the accountant, it's pretty unlikely that Bob the accountant would be running any kind of commands on his computer at all from command line. So that's an interesting piece as well. So I'm going to minimize this for now. And we're going to take a look at Autopsy. So Autopsy is, again, a free tool, and it's part of something called the Sleuth Kit. And what you do is you go through the process to set up a new case, which is just, you know, click through, what do you want to call it, and that kind of thing. And then you'll add your data source, which in this case was my win.rar file, not raw. It's hard to say. So I already have that in there. And this is the part that would have taken forever, and we didn't really have time to likely do it during, you know, the course of this session. But we're going to take some time to look through it together. And I'm just going to kind of start parsing through some things, and we'll see what you all think. So I'm going to start with the web artifacts, because there seems to be a reasonable number that I can look at there, and then go from there. Let me just check for questions. Yes, thanks. Nicole, you are on it with all the links. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's take a look and see what we see. So we have web bookmarks. If I click over here, it'll show me over here the details on this. So we have a bookmark for a Google Drive link, which is pretty much the only thing that this person seems to have bookmarked, because just the Bing, it doesn't really mean anything. So we could totally go to this link, but let's just do a little further looking and see what else we find. So let's look at the cookies. And let's see where this user has been. So, and this will also be apparent in web history too, but we can look here. So he's been to Indeed.com, which makes sense if he's a job hunter. Been to Google, more Google, YouTube, things like doubleclick.net, that's just going to be an advertisement. When you visit all these sites, like a ton of stuff comes down with them other than just, you know, what you're there to look at. So that's all that is. And then let's look at the downloads. So we've got some pictures, it looks like, puppies, lots of puppy pictures, a resume. And then we have something called application.exe, and we have a URL here that's the Google Drive link that we saw before is being bookmarked. So that's interesting. So we're getting an executable file that's downloaded, and I can tell you, like, the way this URL is set up, this is a direct download. So as soon as you click on the link, it's going to automatically download what's there. It's not like it's going to ask you if you want to download it or not. It just does it automatically. So that's a good way to get an infection for sure. All right, so let's look at our web history. So looks like Bob likes Labradoodles, probably where all those puppy pictures were coming from. We've got some resume activity, how he's using resume builder at indeed.com. A little bit more Labradoodle stuff. I don't know what that all is. So yeah, it's nice because it'll show you the URL. It'll also show you the refer URL. So if it didn't come, you know, like you didn't navigate directly to it. So there's our Google Drive again. Oh, in this case, we have a title showing Google Drive virus scan warning. So it seems like Google Drive did not like this link very much, but it seems like it still managed to download. All right, let's see. And here you can see a little more simply the types of things that Bob was searching for. So again, Labradoodles, and he was using Chrome in this case. So it looks like we have something to look for, which is a download of a file called application.exe that was linked to a Google Drive link. So I don't necessarily want to go visit that link. And I'll tell you that it's okay if you do, because it's not anything actually malicious. But anyway, so it gives us something to look for, because that file application.exe should be here somewhere now. So just for fun, let's look at all the images and videos. It'll take a minute to load.
Another question. Someone was just wondering if you can use Autopsy to analyze images of Linux machines.
That's a very good question. I am pretty certain that you can. Yes, you can. So I'll show you, like in the data source section up here. I didn't really start like at the very beginning or the top of it. But this is where you're going to see what image has been attached. And you can see we've got NTFS, which is Windows, but you could certainly have other things there too. And then once you drill down in here, it's basically just like looking at the files. So somebody can Google it for me and just to make sure, but I'm pretty certain you can look at any kind of image in here. The parsing capability may or may not be the same in terms of like pulling out images and stuff like that. But yeah, it should work. Let's see. Okay, so while we're here, we may as well have a look around. So we have program files, we've got users, like this is basically just looking at like, you know, Windows Explorer on a box. So when we look at users, there's something that stands out, which is we have IE user, which is the Bob account, and then we have hacker. So we can see that this user hacker was created on, I have to keep moving my Zoom stuff around, June 19th, with a specific time and everything. If we went back and looked at our Wireshark traffic, when we saw the creation of hacker, we could probably, and we should double check this, totally match up these times. Like when it's added here is probably when it was also captured in the capture, the network capture. So that lets us know that it came from that remote person, threat actor, whatever. So that's useful information with all those times and whatnot. And then let's take a look at the program files, see what we see. Lots of Windows stuff, nothing too fancy. Let's look at the x86 ones. So there is something that stands out here to me in terms of an application that we probably wouldn't expect Bob, the accountant, to have on his computer. I'll give you all a sec to see if you can spot it. I'll give you more than a sec, and I'll look at questions. Ah, perfect. Yeah, Greg, that's absolutely right then. Any of those kind of images. So Linux, Mac, and things that I don't even know what they are. I don't know what YAFS 2 is. Um, yes, exactly. So we've got Netcat and Nmap, which are probably not likely tools for Bob the accountant to have on his system. However, there is something that you can do with Netcat that might be what the attacker was doing. So yes. So the Netcat was very possibly the tool that was being used for that that remote access that we were seeing. So I would be definitely interested in the Netcat usage. And I can just tell you all as an aside that if you want to get, like if you're running netcat.exe, that's part of the Nmap package. So if you download the full Nmap package, Netcat is part of that. So that's why you're seeing those tools there. Okay, so we saw that. All right, let's go back to our presentation. Yes, you can absolutely do data exfil with Netcat, reverse shell, all that good stuff. Netcat's a pretty cool tool. You can do a lot with it, and not just remote connections, but you can do port scanning and band grabbing and all kinds of things. There's a reason that they call it the Swiss Army knife of hacking tools. So let's see. I'm sure I've gone way ahead here. Yes, there's our hacker account. There's our NCAT. Oops, all right. All right, so let's see what else we can see. So let's go down to, close that up. So we can also do a search for files. I was doing the image thing before I got distracted. Doesn't seem to be showing me all the images. Well, that's all right. So we can go to tools and file search by attribute and just do a name search. Obviously, you can do all different kinds of searches here, dates and sizes and types of files. But I'm going to look for that application exe. And it looks like we've got it right here, right? So application.exe, we can see from the hex here, this is, as it says, an executable. MZ is the file header for that. It's located in the user's downloads folder. So that's possibly the malicious file that maybe gave access in the first place. So what you can do here, if you wish, is export the file, extract the file, and then run a hash on it, which I did already. So let's see what we've got here. So in our Bob Roberts case folder, which is what Autopsy created for me, we have an export folder, and here's the application. I installed a tool on here called, where is it? Oh, this might not be on here anymore. There is a tool called sciv.exe, which I thought I put here. Oh yeah, there it is. So I'm gonna load this into the command prompt. Let's do clear. I'm much more of a Linux Mac person, so every time in Windows, it's like I'm stumbling around. Like I wish I had $1 for every time I typed ls instead of dir. It's kind of annoying, but anyway. And of course, you have native built-in hashing tools, which you don't with Windows. Anyway, so I'm going to run this against this file. Okay. Yes, we want to. I agree. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. Yes, I want to quit that. Let's try to run the application at the same time. Okay, so there we have a hash of the file. So we can take that hash and mark. And then we're going to take a look at it in VirusTotal again, which I actually believe I did earlier. Do I still have it up? No, it doesn't look like it. That's okay. So we'll take a look at that hash. And what we see here is we've got ESET saying it's a variant of netcat. I mean, it is netcat, so, or the whole nmap setup thing. And here's all our file details about it. And here you could see it's nmap installer, so on and so forth. It's signed by nmap, or actually Fyodor, the guy who wrote it, and so on and so forth. So I mean, it is basically just nmap with the ncat functionality included in it. We've got some community stuff here. People have run it through Joe's Sandbox, which is a sandbox that I enjoy a lot. Actually, we'll take a look at that real quick. Here it was marked, so 24 out of 100. And here is marked 12 out of 100. So I don't know. Anyway, let's take a look at this. No, I want the HTML report because these are pretty cool if you haven't looked at. Okay. My Brave just crashed on me. That's okay. We'll come back. All right. Thankfully, it comes back pretty easily. Something with the keyboard commands doesn't like open a new tab. It just shuts the whole thing down, which is quite annoying. Oh no, that's not what I want. Come on. There we go. Go to. I use Joe's Sandbox a lot actually, and I use AnyRun as well. So this is just this is not actually the HTML report. Let's see. That was PDF report. We want the HTML report. And again, I think I said this, but it's free to have like a limited account. Obviously, their main customer base are for corporate accounts. So yeah, so here we go. They do a really nice job of parsing out the type of file it is in terms of, you know, if it's some kind of known virus or whatever. This is just marked as suspicious with a rank of 4. And I like this visual where it shows you like what kind of file does it seem to be. So it looks like it's getting some high points for Evader and Trojan bot. Again, keeping in mind that it's not a malicious tool, but it can certainly be used for malicious purposes. And then it drops PE files. Well, of course it does, because those are all the files that are bundled into the nmap executable there. And I like this part too, the mapping to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. If you're not familiar with it already, I definitely recommend checking it out. They've done a great job of identifying different kinds of attacker methodology and tactics, techniques, and procedures, and you know, basically categorizing them. And this seems to be the standard that everybody's moving towards. You'll see it a lot in different security vendor reports and that kind of thing. And it does this nice breakdown of the type of activity that you're seeing in it. And it's all like color coded. So the blue stuff is benign, essentially. And you can see like all these different URLs in here. And then the stuff that's orange, or I think it even maybe is red for some things, are, obviously a higher risk. Green is fine. Yeah, there's a red one, contains functionality to detect virtual machines. All right, maybe. Anyway, so you get the idea. Sorry, I'll get off on a tangent and distracted with these kind of things. There's so many resources. That's one of the things I think I linked to you all as well, is I have a GitHub page, which I may have listed somewhere. Hold on. I think on the cheat sheet thing. Yes, so my GitHub page, I have the cheat sheets that I referenced earlier. So lots of different cheat sheets here. I'll open that up in a new tab. And they're primarily ones I've collected from other places other than one that I created myself on doing like the breakdown of the OSI model and TCP/IP stack, but a lot of them are like SANs. I just put them all in one place so they'd be easy to find. And then the other thing that I recommend is the website listing that I put together, because these are like my go-to websites in terms of different tools that accomplish different things. So anything from conversion tools to decoders to some diversity stuff, of course. And obviously lots of forensics. Got some fun stuff in there too. But anyway, so these are just my collection that I've gathered over the years. So you all are welcome to take advantage of that. All right, let me just pop over to the chat. Okay.
There was a question regarding Autopsy.
Okay.
Since that's a GUI wrapper for the sleuth kit, does that give you the same access anywhere to the equivalent sleuth kit command line option?
I actually don't know that. I would have to look into it, or somebody else could Google it if they wanted to. But I think that you should be able to like pull that data in from the broader tool. But yeah, I've never tried it, so I'm not sure. I should give prizes to everybody who answers the questions that I don't know the answers to, except for I don't have any prizes. I'm sure I could dream up something, but anyway, all right, so let's get back to what we were doing there. Okay, so at this point, we have collected a fair bit of information. Who wants to take a crack at the who, what, when, where? I'll start. Actually, I'm going to present this next slide. So putting it all together. So the first thing is, the question is, what happened? So what do we think happened? I think we have a pretty good idea of what happened. I'll give you all a minute to respond. Nicole, you're awesome with all the links. Thank you so much for that. Oh yeah, the sec tool site is great too. I like that one. Okay. So any ideas on what happened? All right. So I'd say what happened is Bob's computer got hacked, essentially. That's why we were called in to investigate in the first place. What was the likely initial infection vector? So what did we see that maybe gave us some clues about that? Oh, I just thought we didn't look at the, hold on. We have not looked at the other output from the last activity viewer. Yes, so last activity viewer, and this one you all have access if you want to poke around at it. Totally almost forgot about this. So this is a pretty cool tool, which I really only discovered recently and started to use it. But you run it, and again, you'd have to run this on your victim computer. So one of those things where you'd have to, you know, make a note of your forensic footprint there. But it breaks down all the recent activity for this box. So we can see things like user logons, running of executable files, so on and so forth. So why don't we take a few minutes, since you all have access to this in my shared folders or shared folder, to see if you get any ideas of activity that might be useful to our timeline. And I created this, I made it so it's filterable right now. So you could filter, say, example, by the file name that could be useful, or you could filter by the description, see what kind of activities are there, like what's task run. Actually, I'm going to clear all, select task run. And a lot of these are just going to be like your normal Windows activity, so may or may not be interesting. Probably most of it's not interesting, but it's still a good place to look. So let's take a couple of minutes to parse through this and see if there's anything useful. Pop over to chat for a minute. So I like everybody's thoughts here on the notes. So we've identified the file that was downloaded is Nmap, or the Nmap suite that includes netcat. So it's quite possible that that was sent to Bob via some common method, to have him click on that Google Drive link. So that would give me some suggestion of perhaps what happened there. One thing that we didn't look at is Bob's credentials, which we actually could have extracted those, but I didn't set that up just because of timing, although we're doing fine on timing. Bob had a really bad password, and Bob had RDP active on his computer. So it probably wouldn't have been a stretch for somebody to brute force their way in via RDP. So that's another possible access point as well. All right, so let's look back at this again. All right, so I think I would look for some specific things, right? Let's look for netcat, for example. Do we have that in here? We do. So we have several instances of netcat being run on the 19th and the 18th. So we know that by looking at this, that netcat was running on Bob's computer. We are reasonably certain that Bob did not start Netcat himself. And of course, that would be something we could ask Bob if he used Netcat. I don't think that he would know what that was. What was another one that we could look at? How about the application.exe? See if we see that. Oops, that was a fail. Clear application.exe. There we go. All right, so we have one instance of this being run, application.exe, and we can see over here what it says is the nmap installer. So Bob was sent a link that was the nmap installer. He installed it and went from there. All right, let's see, what else could we see? Remember that weird script that we saw? Let's see if we see PowerShell running. Oh yes, we have quite a few instances of PowerShell running too. Another tool that Bob is not likely to have been running on his own. And the first instance of that was on the 16th. So if we look back over here, oops, minimize that. Application.exe. Oh, those dates don't quite line up. It's the 18th there. Let's see when the downloads were. That's the 18th. Well, that's kind of weird. I don't know why it would say the 16th on the other thing. Or no, maybe it didn't. I'm looking at the wrong thing. I feel like I'm just talking to myself. I kind of am, but that's okay. Application.exe. Yeah, that's, oh, interesting. So it looks like it was, yeah, this is all on the 18th. Okay. Ready? All right. Any other tools? I wonder if we could see remote desktop. I don't even know. I haven't looked. No. That's because it was being run from the attacker side. So we're not seeing that activity here since we were just the receiving end. All right, let me go back to the chat here for a sec. Oh yeah, so Greg, with regard to your question about running FTK from a USB, yes, that would normally be the way to do it, but I didn't have the setup for attaching a USB to this virtual machine. Well, it just wasn't working properly, so I just did the download thing instead. But yeah, normally you would do like a live CD or USB stick. Oh, remote desktop was run on 618 at 642. Perfect. Let's see. Netcat, yes. All right, so you all are doing a great job of finding all the artifacts. So let's go back to sort of putting it all together. Ooh, I need to plug into my computer because it's about to die. 1 second. That's better, hopefully. All right, so putting it all together, what happened? Bob got hacked. What was the likely initial infection vector? I would say a phishing email. Oh, I didn't look for that, but there was probably a mail client that was running. We could double check that against the other artifacts. but he got that download link from somewhere, and chances it was his mail program. All right, and then what tools did the threat actor use? So we've definitely seen Netcat. The script that we saw transferring over Wireshark was actually PowerShell Empire, which is a common post-exploitation tool. And RDP they used also. So we saw some evidence of all of that in the packet captures in Autopsy and in Volatility too, I think, and definitely in the last activity view. So what remediation steps would we recommend for Bob? There's probably lots of different things that I would say. Certainly blocking incoming connections. He apparently had RDP wide open. And get rid of malware. So if Bob had a decent antivirus on his system, probably would have flagged up well, it might not have flagged the nmap. Actually, it quite potentially wouldn't have, but still, it's a good practice to have antivirus. And then just learning about good cyber hygiene. So essentially, being aware of potential phishing links and things like that. Don't take candy from strangers, so on and so forth. So I left some time for basically if anybody wanted me to step through anything in particular in any of this evidence, or they wanted to step through it themselves and ask me questions about how to do things. So the last bit was kind of meant to be exploratory. I'm also happy to answer questions about like, my career change or what I do in my day job now, that kind of thing. I have a screen here with all my contact information. So that's my email at Cyberjutsu. I have the Medium site, that's blogs. I write typically about cyber competition challenge walkthroughs and a bit of getting started in cybersecurity, and so on and so forth. And then down there at the bottom is the cyber competition Slack. If you'd like to be a member of that Slack, just shoot me an email and I will happily add you to it. And let me go to the chat again. Okay, just catching up. Yes, so the auto run shell was a weird thing. But one of the things that I look at too is when you're looking at an attack, is it like a scripted attack or is it like an actual person behind the keyboard, typing things out? And when I see like errors or commands that are mistyped and things like that, that tends to make me think that it's an actual human live. And then the autorun.sh was actually sort of a red herring that I threw in there because it was just one of the options in the nmap file to install it. So I just ran it to throw people off, basically. So excellent job catching that. And then, so I think I saw a couple of questions about like some other forensic tools like Tableau and things like that. And to be honest, all I really am ever using is the free stuff, because in my day-to-day job, the most forensics I do are, of course, the network traffic analysis. I do a fair bit of that when I'm analyzing like malware, seeing what it's doing. And I don't do, I don't run like forensic tools as a part of my day job. We have an entire incident response team that does that kind of stuff typically. And then my team is more on just collecting the intel from those investigations. But we do definitely drill down into like our user data. to find correlations between different kinds of like campaigns that might be running. So for example, I was looking at a Metamorpho ransomware. They had actually a C2 link, which is kind of weird for ransomware, but not certainly unheard of. And you know, I was able to look at our telemetry and see a lot of different customers that had, you know, potentially seen that link, largely blocked, of course. But so yeah, so that's really interesting. Let's see. What else? Oh, bytecode generator. Yeah, I'm not even sure where that came from, to be honest. It might have been something from PowerShell Empire, an artifact from that. All right, so yeah, so we actually have a fair bit of time left, like 14 minutes. So this is your chance to ask me questions or ask me to walk through things. I'm happy to go through all that. Oh yes, Greg, that's the filtering out known good using NSRL is a helpful tool. Let me see if I could set that up. So Greg, when I set up this case, I didn't turn on the known good hashing function, so I won't actually be able to do it with this case. I'd have to start a whole new case. But like I said, I will share the hard disk image with you all, and you're welcome to try it out yourself. But yeah, unfortunately, I didn't do it because I wasn't going to be using anything in particular. But the NSRL, which stands for National Software Library Resource, I think, or reference. That's something that NIST puts together. So it's just like all the known good files out there. So if you looked up, I don't know, it's like different icons and things like that, like GIF.icon would be in NSRL time, or listed as that in VirusTotal. And I actually just did an investigation recently where we had a bunch of files from the threat actor, and we're identifying, qualifying, quantifying, whatever, all of them. And there was a number of image files, and of course, you know, you get excited and you're like, oh, maybe it's Stag or something cool, but it's like, no, they were all literally in SRL. So not exciting, but let's see. I'll just stay tuned for any questions. And if you don't have more questions, that's cool. We can always wrap up a little bit early, give you some 10 minutes back before the next session. Oh, okay. So Miriam asked if there was a path I'd recommend to landing a job in forensics. So yes, that's a great question. I think that when people think of digital forensics, they tend to think of like law enforcement and crime stuff. You know, we've all seen like the shows like NCIS or Criminal Minds with Penelope, that kind of thing. So those jobs are actually few and far between, but where you can really get started in this kind of work is doing breach investigations, incident response, that sort of thing. So I would look more in that area, and you're also going to get probably a broader set of different things to work on. Whereas in law enforcement, and I don't work in law enforcement, I just know people who do this. Typically, you're just like you're analyzing like hard disks all day long or mobile phones all day long, and that's what you do. Whereas in more of a like a corporate breach investigation role, you'll do a lot more like different kinds of things. So yeah, great question. So, oh yeah, so living off the land, that's actually something that is really interesting and we see a lot of in my job, where the attacker comes on the system and really they are able to do what they need to do just using like PowerShell and WMIC and native tools. They don't even have to use anything special. So like for me, like I would not even have Bob the accountant be able to have PowerShell running on his computer because there's like no probably need for it. So yeah, just it's interesting. It's such a fascinating field. These are good questions. All right, we'll see if there's any more questions. I'll give it a sec. All right, I think we might be good. So again, I'll upload that hard drive image. It's going to take a while because it's pretty big, but you're welcome to play around with that. Feel free to hit me up anytime with questions. Twitter DMs are probably the fastest way, and email, I guess, after that. And I'm delighted to have had you all here today. Thanks so much, and thanks for being enthusiastic participants. And yeah, I think, oh, okay. Now I'm getting a couple more questions. So yes, the tools are fine in court. It doesn't matter if they're a free tool or not, as long as they're vetted by the industry, basically, and you can demonstrate that your results are repeatable and that kind of thing. There's a whole like slew of what the actual requirements are for tools to be considered okay, but it's not the tool that's getting rated, it's the person who's doing like the testifying, basically. Yeah, so certificates for forensics, yes, there are some. EC Council has a forensic certificate, and SANS has some forensic certificates, or certifications, not certificates. And I feel like there's a couple of other sort of, like, I know there's definitely industry specific ones. Like I have the FTK toolkit, forensic toolkit certification that they provide. You just have to use their tool, obviously, to get it. And NCASE has one too. And yeah, NCASE, I'm not a big fan of NCASE, but I don't agree with the argument about open source versus closed source, because like I said, it's all about being able to show repeatability and that kind of thing. And it's the investigator, not the tool so much. You could actually go on to like Google Legal Scholar and look for cases that reference like Wireshark or FTK or whatever. Autopsy is a little trickier because you'll get all kinds of weird, not autopsy sleuth kit stuff. But yeah, you can. I'm just reading that. Oh, free trading and certs right now. That's excellent. I think it would be kind of fun to do a autopsy training and a cert. I'd love to know more about it, actually. So thanks for that information, Greg. Yeah, repeatable and verifiable, absolutely. I'm going to hire Nicole when this is done.
Here.
Yeah, I think we're about done. It's just, I thought we were done with questions, but we got a couple more. So I think we're good. All right. Well, thank you again. Thanks, Nicole, for being such a huge help. And thanks everybody for coming. And I think this is where we'll end it.